almost all I have to say for you. The article pretty much summed it up, but I put the fandom wiki in the description below, so you can check out Cobb Vanth's page as well and acquiring the Mandalorian armor, so that you can verify that for yourself. All right, next topic is Batwoman star Ruby Rose exits the CW series. This is a really weird moment for CW, I think, because I think they've written themselves, they've promoted themselves into a corner of ideology versus production versus actually making money. I think this is something that is the result of failure to draw in true fans, pandering to the wrong crowd, and then not being able to deliver high quality content. And I'm going to break into this. I watched the first 5 episodes of Batwoman. It was very difficult for me to do. The reason why was because I wanted this to work really badly. Ruby Rose, I think, is a very talented actress, and I really liked her casting. I thought she was a great choice to play Batwoman. I think the best thing about the show was Ruby herself. Her in the show was redeeming at times. It was actually very good to have her in that show, because most of the rest of the show was hot trash. A couple of things I think most people would not have noticed, and I think this is one of the reasons why the show is failing, but I think it's being propped up by the money coming in from like The Flash, Arrow, Legends of Tomorrow, some of the other shows that are on the network. I think that it's being propped up, and this is the project they're hoping will take off, but has not yet. Most people haven't seen this show. And I'm serious, most people have not. I know a boatload of nerds from all over the world, all over the United States, all over the interweb. Very few people are watching this, and I'm not trying to put this show down. I'm trying to rationalize what is taking place right now. I think Ruby Rose probably did not get along with certain people on the project. I don't have anything that would suggest that. I'm just thinking that if the show is continuing for season 2, either they were going to cut her pay, or she just didn't like the experience, and maybe she was, some people were saying she was getting a lot of hate online. I didn't see that. I didn't see hardly any hate for her online. Most people actually like her in the role. And I'm really in touch with the fan casting community. A lot of people really like her in the role. The show itself is not very good. The CGI is horrendous. You can find legit news. You can find legit nerds on YouTube with significantly better CGI and visual effects than is being put forth on this show on CW. The first few episodes especially are incredibly noticeable. When she goes to throw a batarang, you can see that it's a clear and obvious overlay. It doesn't match up with the lighting of her hand. When it sticks in a door, it's like you can tell that it's horrible. Like, and I don't mean to be critical. You guys know me. You've seen me review all kinds of stuff. I'm actually one of the most graceful. I'm not a critic. You guys know this about me. I'm not a hard critic. I don't want to be. I'm not trying to be. I like to think critically, but I'm usually pretty, I can see the bright parts of things. I can separate the bad parts of things from the good. That's what I'm trying to do right now. Is I thought Ruby Rose was the best part of this show with nothing even close. The script was very bad. The story, I thought for the most part, was very boring. It was written in a way that does not catch your attention. They gave away what could have been a very awesome plot thread at the end of the first episode. Like the whole I'm not going to say what it is in case you guys haven't seen it. I do encourage you, go check it out, see it for yourself. Be your own judge. Don't just take my word for it. If you want to know whether or not Batwoman was bad or if it was good and it deserves more seasons, watch it for yourself. I fully endorse and encourage, just watch it. I think you might be more disappointed than me. I thought the CGI was crap. There was a few really cool fight scenes that I did enjoy. I thought were fun. It's not even it claims to be a crime show, like a detective. It's not really written that way. It tries to be, but it's not. It doesn't set things up in a way that you're like, what's going to happen here? You know, you kind of already know. It's kind of like really elementary writing, I think. And I know these are very harsh criticisms right now. I'm not trying to poop on this show, but it's getting renewed, and the main character is not, the main actress is jumping ship. This should tell you something. I think they were going to either cut her pay, or she was realizing this is a really bad representation of my acting ability. Because she's better than this. She was in John Wick. So what the heck? You know, like, she's in John Wick. She goes from John Wick. Now she has her own TV show, but it's like the worst show. She doesn't need that. She doesn't need to be on the worst show. If they're not going to increase the budget drastically and get people in there that really are really good at their job as writers, as you know, creators, people that are working on the visual effects, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for her as an actress. It's not going to help her career. So I think that's probably more or less what's happening. Now, I will break into why what I'm saying I think is perfectly valid, and it's not just purely my opinion. So let me just read this really quick. This is the note from Ruby Rose. She says this, and she's very cordial about this, by the way, very cordial. They handled it really well. According to the Hollywood Reporter, Rose will step down after just one season of the CW series. She did not provide a reason for her departure. So this is very critical. She didn't provide a reason. Warner Bros. Plans to recast the role, and the show had already been renewed for a second season. So it was already renewed. Then she quit. Interesting, isn't it? Like, it had already been contracted for her to come back. And then she put in her 2 weeks and was like, I'm gone, you know, or not even 2 weeks, but in this industry, you just say, like, no thanks. So she's just gone. Batwoman is slated to return for a full season sometime in January 2021. Read her statement for yourself. I'm going to read it for you now and try to follow along. It says, Ruby says, I have made the very difficult decision not to return to Batwoman next season, Rose announced. This was not a decision I made lightly, as I have the utmost respect for the cast, crew, and everyone involved in the show, both in Vancouver and Los Angeles. I am beyond appreciative to Greg Berlanti, he's the main guy at all the DC TV shows, Sarah Schechter, and Carolyn Dries for not only giving me this incredible opportunity, but for welcoming me into the DC universe. They have so beautifully created. Thank you, Peter Roth and Mark Pedowitz, and the team at Warner Bros. The CW, who put so much into the show and always believed in me. Thank you to everyone who made season 1 a success. I'm truly grateful. So she leaves with a ton of grace. She handles it extremely well. Although she didn't give a reason for her departure, it's clear that she decided that this was not going to work for her. I don't know if that was a pay thing. I don't know if it was she just wasn't getting along with people in the background but played it really smooth up front for the press, or if she saw, hey, this is not going to do me any favors for my career ongoing. Let's take a look at why I think this is the case. So there's an article here about the Batwoman season 1 ratings, right? And so you can see here that, for instance, we have Sunday, you know, like these are the air dates of the different episodes. There are 20 episodes in total for season 1. And you can see right here, as far as the viewers, this is all I'm really pointing out here. 1.8 million viewers is what it premiered at. And again, remember, they came hot off of the Crisis on Infinite Earths crossover, which was really, really good. Like, it was really cool. almost every DC fan that watched it, and even just people that are just fans of the shows in general, was really happy with kind of the way that it came out. It's off of the tone of all the other shows. It's totally its own thing. Even though it is all of their worlds collided, it functions like its own little story bubble. They all kind of poured into and built up to that crossover. But regardless, it's a fun event for the fans at the end of the day. And I thought Ruby Rose was fantastic in it, and most people did as well, and we're really excited for the show. The show started with 1.8 million viewers. 1.86 million viewers. And then from there, it starts to drop. It goes from 1.8 close to 2 million, and then the next episode is down to 1.4. After that, it's down to 1.2, and again, a little over the previous week, but 1.2 again, then down to 1.1, then 1.09, then 1.09 again, 009, then 1.008, and then it makes a huge jump around December 9th. It says 1.704. Then, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that may have been the weekend of the crossover. Someone check that for me. I'm going to have to double check that date. But I think there was a spike in attention at that point because people were excited for the show because it was also marketed into the crossover. They got a few episodes up, and then the crossover hit. I think this was the week of the crossover, was December 9th. 1704 gets a huge spike again, back almost to its premiere numbers, and then comes back down the next week to 0.791, which is less than it had ever been at that time. So this tells me that people were hyped for Batwoman during the crossover event. And they were watching, they started watching, and people were like, hey, first episode, oh, that wasn't that good. They watched the next one, it's still not good. And then it just kept going. People started dropping out and out and out, but everyone came back for the crossover. They watched the crossover, and when the crossover came, she was super good. Like, she was really good in the crossover, which also makes me think this could have been a directing issue for Batwoman, because it was different directors on the crossover. But nevertheless, crossover hits, big spike in attention back to the Batwoman show. Not just for the crossover, but from the crossover. People then were like, hey, I'm going to give Batwoman another shot. They jump back in on that week, watch the CW, 1.704, and then they realized it's not that good. So then after they have their break and they come back January 19th, it dropped back down from 1.7 million people watching to 0.7 million. They dropped 1 million people at that time. 1 million viewers dropped out of 1.7 million. So that's considerable. That's quite a lot. That's more than half of the people watching the show dropped out. Think about that. They lost half their viewership again in a week. So it went from close to 1.8, right? So 1.8, 1.4, 1.2, stayed at 1.2 again, 1.1, close to 1.1, back down to 1, stayed right around 1. Crossover hits, and they get an influx of people from the crossover, swelling it back up to almost its original premiere numbers, back up to 1.7, as opposed to the premiering 1.8. But then the next week, it drops 1 million back to 0.7 million. You see what I'm saying? Then it continues to drop back down. 0.6, then it goes up to 0.8. It gets a little bit more attention, then stays at 0.8, then 0.7, then 0.7, then 0.7, then 0.6, then 0.6, then 0.7, then 0.7. So their average, including the times when they almost hit 2 million, their average is 0.9 million viewers. I would be very interested to see how the ratings are for Arrow right now, or for the Flash. I would really like to see those numbers. But nevertheless, you can tell that the viewership starts really dipping. Again, most shows do have a large number of people that start out at the premiere just to see if the show might be for them. And obviously there will be plenty of people that decide it's not for me. But there's also when you consider how much of a drop there was, and that it continued to drop until it got to that 0.7 point, 0.6, 0.7 million. That's a lot of loss. That's a lot of loss. Almost that's half. You know what I mean? Like they dropped to half. Instead of going up in viewership, like Arrow took off. Arrow started low and just kept growing. That's why they spun a bunch of shows out of it. In this case, that's not the case. And I do think that this is one of the reasons why Ruby Rose probably was like, this is not good for my career. I need to think about what my next projects are going to be. And if I'm going to be more or less valuable to the industry, if I keep staying on this show, I think I need to make a change of course. And so I think that's probably what happened. Now, let's take a look at the reviews. So you can see here, if you simply Google Batwoman, you get here the IMDb page, the Rotten Tomatoes, and the IGN. IGN has an 8 out of 10. I don't know why it's that high. But we're going to look today at the IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. So if we go over to IMDb, you can see that, let's see, it says at the top of the stars, it's got 3.5 out of 10. That is not a lot. 3.5 out of 10 with 26,000 what looks like reviews. If we continue over to Rotten Tomatoes, we have the tomato meter. It says 79% average tomato meter and 13% audience score. Most people tend to not care as much about the critics. But for those who do, I want to point something out to you. What this statistic means, for those who don't know Rotten Tomatoes, it's a thumbs up, thumbs down type of thing. They basically put the benchmark at 70% of like you liked it 70 out of 100. Upward of 70 is a thumbs up. Under 70 is a thumbs down. And if you have 10 critics and all of them say it was somewhere between 70% liked and 100% liked, they gave it somewhere between 70 and 100 likability or approval, then it gets thumbs up. It's like it just measures numbers of thumbs up and then averages that. So that's basically what we're dealing with. I want to show you, if you see the score details, it says all critics averaged, you get the 79% thumbs up. If you just show the top critics, like the best, you get 45. So if you include all critics, you get 79. When you filter for just the top critics, you get 45%. It's not a lot. And what's more important, I think, is the audience score. These are people that are watching, that are fans. These are people that are watching that are just trying to be entertained. They're not here being like, okay, yeah, well, let's take a look. Okay, the lighting was cool here. I really enjoy the way that they wrote the character. They had all my favorite political messages in there, so I'm going to agree with that. No, forget the critics. For a second, let's just take a look at the audience score. We're talking about 13% gave it 70 or more. It could be as low as 70% was the best reviews. Like it doesn't mean that people gave it 100% for the thumbs up. Thumbs up could be as low, or if you want to say high, as 70. And most people didn't. Most people gave it a thumbs down, which means it could have been anywhere below 70. It could have been all mostly 69, mostly 68. It doesn't mean that it was at the floor at like 1% or anything like that. But this is not a good review. This is not a good tally of reviews. So again, that's one of the reasons why I think it went down the way that it did. And so that's pretty much all I really have to say about that. I think I'm going to, I'm not currently watching the show anymore. I stopped watching at episode 5. It was boring. It was not fun to watch. It was not interesting. It was poorly edited. I think it could have been a lack of good direction. It could have been all script. It could have been all of those things. I really don't think it was the acting. I mean, there was like 1 or 2 people in the show that were not terrific, but Ruby was great, I thought, the whole time. It just, the story sucked. the script was awful. The CGI looked completely unfinished. It looked like I don't do editing, guys. It looked like I could have done that. It was not great. So I think Ruby's making the better choice for herself, for her career. Unfortunately, I'm gonna miss her. I thought she was great. I thought she was the right casting for that role. And I might even do a fan casting just for this show to try to, help it out and give it my thoughts on what I think I could be. Not that my thoughts matter, but who cares? It might be fun. And maybe you guys would want to do that too. Let me know who you want to see play Batwoman in replacing Ruby Rose, who has just stepped down from her position for the second season. The second season is still happening. So that's another thing. So I'm sorry that this was so Debbie Downer. I just wanted to give you guys the most honest review that I possibly could. Without, I'm not trying to beat anyone up. It's just, you got to tell it like it is sometimes. And so that's what it is. I hope they find someone awesome. I hope they find someone, maybe not even a big name. Maybe it is a big name, but it doesn't have to be. Maybe it's someone smaller that just gets the job done right and people can grab onto. And perhaps the second time around they evaluate, hey, what are our issues? What are our problems? Let's fix it. Let's tighten it up. Let's get better. And maybe they do get better. Maybe the second season turns into something awesome. I would love for that to happen. Not sure that it will. But anyway, let me know your thoughts down below. And finally, let's go to the next topic and the last topic of the day. Last topic of the day is The Batman. Colin Farrell teases tasty penguin aesthetic. I really am. I was intrigued by this headline. I know it's not a lot to go on, but I did want to discuss this with you because it is fun to imagine what's going to happen in this next film. But Colin Farrell gives us an interesting quote